by reciting this, I believe there is no God but Allah, and I believe Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Other caste people come here?
Yes, every week maybe 5%. Yes, 5%. Embrace Islam, yes?
5 to 10 people embrace Islam every
5%.
week?
Yes, 5%. Persons.
5%?
Yes, from other religions. Yes.
Other religions like?
And like Catholic,
Yes.
Protestant, or Hinduism, or Buddhism.
Okay.
Yes.
And what makes them re-revert to Islam? How?
Maybe he to.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome. In today's program, we discuss poverty and hunger. In the first part of the program, the crisis in Gaza. And in the second part, how the sharp increase in food prices and shortages could lead to a political nightmare. Let's start with the Palestinians. On Thursday, Israel cut off the only source of fuel to Gaza's 1.4 million people after a deadly Palestinian raid in an Israeli fuel depot, deepening the seaside territory's hardship. Meanwhile, a convoy of trucks drove through the streets of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip with signs on the front reading, "Gaza is burning without fuel." And 80% of services in Khan Yunis municipality have stopped working because of the fuel crisis. Also, universities closed down yesterday. Now, we're going to discuss how Gaza is surviving and the way things are progressing there with our guests. But first, let's take a report that was recorded today in Gaza.
The conflict between Israel and Hamas goes on, where currently Gaza Strip is experiencing one of the hardest times it's ever been through. On the military side, Israel continues to escalate its attacks against Palestinians, killing and injuring many and causing great destruction. At the same time, a financial blockade, which has been imposed on the Strip for the past 10 months, has become even tighter, reaching an unbearable stage. In return, Palestinian militant groups continue to target Israeli bordering towns with homemade rockets and mortar bombs, causing damage and injuries in some cases.
The Palestinian resistance groups are acting in self-defense against the ongoing Israeli aggression. There is a process of collective punishment and a genocide the Palestinian people is getting exposed to, and thus Palestinians are ought to defend themselves against the Israeli threats and attacks.
Extensive efforts exerted by Egypt for the past few weeks, which aim at mediating a ceasefire between Palestinian factions and Israel, have failed so far to reach an agreement. Both Hamas and Islamic Jihad insist on having a comprehensive and mutual ceasefire in both Gaza Strip and the West Bank. At a time, Israel refuses to make the West Bank part of the deal. The truce, if reached, will maintain a complete stop to the rockets fired at Israeli towns from Gaza Strip, and in return, Israel would show more flexibility in the borders issue, allowing probably the Rafah borders to open in order to alleviate some of the suffering caused by the ongoing closure of the borders.
The Egyptians are trying to implement some kind of truce between Hamas or between the Palestinians in general, the resistance factions in Gaza and Israel. And I think all the parties at this point has some kind of benefit of this truce. So yes, probably there's going to be some improvement in that direction, but everything depends on the Israeli position, which is still, until this point, not moving, not giving anything to the Palestinians.
And in light of the continued Israeli aggression and the agonizing conditions under which Gazans have been living, the Fatah-dominated Palestinian Authority has suggested that international forces be brought into Gaza Strip in order to protect the Gazans, a matter completely refused by citizens as well as Palestinian factions over here.
I want those who ask for international forces to come to Gaza Strip to clarify the reason why such forces may come. What are they expected to do? Are they going to help protect the Palestinians against the Israeli atrocities? There are international forces in the West Bank city of Hebron, but those forces cannot do anything to face attacks of Israeli shelters against Palestinians there. Therefore, we say that any international forces that may come to Gaza Strip might actually complicate matters even further.
Talking about sending Arabic or international forces into Gaza Strip is similar to sending more occupational forces. Such groups will have no authority or legitimacy on our land. We ask those who think of such a step to reconsider and instead try to find ways to lift the blockade and ease the suffering of our people. We are against the occupation, and any force that will come to Gaza Strip is going to be considered an occupational one. Thus, we refuse the idea and will end up fighting any invading forces.
In the meantime, the latest Israeli restrictions, which have prevented fuel from entering Gaza Strip in sufficient amounts, have caused daily life to deteriorate severely, where the transportation sector has become almost paralyzed, bringing down with it many other sectors, including health, education, and environmental.
Israel, and for the past 7 months, has been violating all humanitarian and international laws, as well as the Geneva Convention, which call for the occupation to provide at least the basic necessities for the citizens. The Israeli decision to reduce the fuel amounts supplied to Gaza Strip to 6% of regular fuel and 30% of diesel has caused depriving all segments of society from many basic and vital needs.
Fuel for Gaza's power station, as well as cooking gas, are expected to be allowed into Gaza Strip today. However, regular fuel needed for transportation may not enter yet, according to an Israeli decision. Internal differences, Israeli limitations, and military escalation have all been adding to the gravity of the situation here, making even the hope for better living conditions still far-fetched. For political
Hello and welcome back. We've been joined from Gaza by Dr. Maher Sabra, who's a writer and political analyst. Hello and welcome to the program, Maher. Well, let me ask you first, because Israel's Interior Minister on Sunday said that there was no siege over Gaza and that hardly any supplies had been stopped from entering the coastal region, whilst residents in Khan Yunis held a protest against shortages. Mayor Shertirit said on Sunday that an alleged Israeli siege on Gaza was a lie that Hamas is trying to sell all over the world. There was no siege of Gaza, according to him. He said, we did not stop supplies of almost anything. Well, has Hamas exploited the situation in a propaganda campaign, or is the Israeli official himself is lying?
Well, definitely, I think, first of all, we should not forget that Israel is an occupation forces, and it's occupying Gaza, and definitely they will send any propaganda to the world. But the facts on the ground are clear to everybody. I mean, the situation in Gaza really, with the siege and the closure, hit to a catastrophic point now. I mean, the siege, the closure has affected almost every aspect of life in Gaza, the education, hospitals, no fuel for ambulances to get injured people and sick people to the hospitals. And the international agencies has sent many alarming voices. The UN agencies in Gaza said this situation in Gaza is really so terrible. We are hitting a crisis point in Gaza from a humanitarian point of view. So I think Israel has no benefit, to get the real picture in Gaza to the world. So they try to send any propaganda signals to everybody. But the situation on the ground is so difficult, and it's actually terrible.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, has pledged to keep hitting Hamas so that it cannot continue to operate against Israeli civilians as it does, he said. Hamas was responsible for all attacks from Gaza and must bear the consequences, and this is according to Ehud Olmert when he was addressing a meeting of his Kadima party. He said, alongside our war against terror and Hamas, we will continue to hold serious and responsible negotiations that can lead us to agreements with moderate Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Israel agreed to hand over the Atarot, which is Kalandia airport in northern Jerusalem, to the Palestinian Authority. The Israeli Hebrew daily Kol Hazman reported in the beginning of the week. The newspaper quoted senior officials in the Israeli Foreign Ministry as saying that the deal was reached during ongoing secret talks between Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni and Chief Palestinian negotiator Ahmed Koraya, according to the newspaper Kol Hazman. The transfer of the airport is an Israeli gesture to strengthen Fatah and moderates in the West Bank as against the Hamas movement that controls the Gaza Strip. Now, all these concessions to President Abbas, do they boost his popularity, or do they turn people against him?
Well, I think Israel, first of all, likes the situation of the Palestinians at this time, the separation between Gaza and the West Bank. And the issue actually is not Hamas. Israel is really punishing, this collective punishment for 1.5 million people in Gaza. And Israel just put these allegations, which are false allegations actually, that it's doing this because of Hamas. And in the meantime, Israel is not really giving real advantages to President Abbas to move on. I mean, the situation in the West Bank is still actually is not really much better than the situation in Gaza in different aspects. So Israel is not really, until now, the Israeli policies is not clear that it's really going to cut a peace deal with the Palestinians, and this is clear. Again, Israel is not giving anything to President Abbas. Even the issue of the airport, this is a minimal issue with the situation in the West Bank, with the many, about 500 checkpoints in the West Bank, the separation wall, the situation in the West Bank is so terrible. So I believe Israel is not really helping Mr. Abbas and his cabinet in West Bank to really gain any even popular support among the Palestinians. And this is the real issue. The issue is Israel is not at this point likes to have any solution with the Palestinians. They like the situation as is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we've been joined by Baria Alamuddin, who's a writer and political analyst at Al Hayat newspaper at the London desk. Hello and welcome to the program, Baria. And let me ask you about the present visit of former U.S. President Jimmy Carter yesterday. He met Hamas leader Nasser Shar in the West Bank and laid a wreath at the grave of Yasser Arafat. He met Shar in Ramallah, saying he had requested permission to enter Hamas-ruled Gaza, but that this was turned down during his visit to the West Bank yesterday. Carter also placed a wreath on the grave of Yasser Arafat. We remember that President George W. Bush did not visit Arafat's mausoleum in Ramallah when he visited the region earlier this year. Now, I want to ask you, Baria, wasn't it Arafat who signed agreements with Israel, Oslo, Madrid? Why is this hostility towards Yasser Arafat, who's a symbol to Palestinians and